Hi everybody, it's Rich. It's week 12. So we've now got our reCAPTCHA code displaying on our page, but it doesn't do anything yet. We're not doing any checking on the back end. So what we're going to need to do, we're going to need to look at some of the Google documentation to see how do we interpret when the user clicks I am not, whether they've clicked I am not a robot or not. So I'm just going to go back and pull up the reCAPTCHA documentation. So I'm going to go into the resources section and into the guide. So we've done this part already. We've displayed the widget already. So we've added this script to our header, and we've added this div called gReCAPTCHA to our form. That's what renders our reCAPTCHA widget. Now we need to talk a little bit about how the API works. What do we actually get back from reCAPTCHA? Now, unfortunately, Google hasn't done a very good job at documenting this API. You'll notice it says version 1 old. They have code samples for how to use the old version, and they've got these code samples in a whole bunch of other languages. So for example, if I want to see how to check the reCAPTCHA response for version 1, it's great. It gives me all the code and I can simply copy and paste it. Now it tells us here's refer to version 2, but they haven't given us code samples in version 2 yet. I'd highly recommend somebody write one. So it tells us here's one for PHP, but when we go here, this is actually version 1. This is the old library. So they do give us some information about getting the user response, but they don't actually give us the PHP code for the current version. So let's look at what we get back. So what we want to do is we need to send a URL request to this URL, google.com/reCAPTCHA/API/site-verify. Now we're going to have a bit of a challenge because our register form, keep in mind, which we have here, our register form is designed to go to save registration. Well, how are we going to make URL calls to both Google's API and save registration? Well, we'll come back to that, but we have a solution for that. So we want to send a post request. Tells us our method is post, and what we want to send, we need to send our two required parameters, our secret key. So this was generated a little earlier in this activity, and I suggest you put this in a text file so you had easy access to it. And then we also need to send in the response. So this is the value that the user checked on our form. As an option, we can send in the IP address. We don't need that. So these are the values. We're going to do a HTML post to this URL on Google. We're going to use post as the method. We're going to send in our secret key and our response. And what we're going to get back is called the JSON object. So what JSON stands for is JavaScript Object Notation. Now JSON is really the current standard protocol for how APIs exchange information. Years ago, the old standard, which is still around, and I've written many web services using the old standard, what we used was XML. So the beauty of using XML or JSON, when two different applications are talking to each other through an API, it really doesn't matter whether our website is built in PHP and Google's API is built using Java or ASP.NET or something else. As long as the messages that go back and forth are in a common language or common platform like XML or JSON, then our applications can exchange requests and responses. So what we're going to get back is a JSON object. So JSON is basically just an array. It's a set of key value pairs. So this object that we're going to get back is a key called success. That'll have one of two values, true or false. And if success evaluates to false, we will also have error codes. So what we're going to need to do on our save register page is call this URL, send in the secret and response, and then we're going to need to interpret or parse this JSON object. And then that'll tell us whether the user correctly answered CAPTCHA or reCAPTCHA correctly. So just to give you another look at what JSON might look like. So for example, here would be some sample JSON if we had a couple of user accounts. So we have this nested array where we have two different users with a set of properties and values for each user. Now the old version in XML, the old standard would look something like this. It's really the same data structured. These XML tags look like HTML tags. They are markup. They're defined by the user. So this is really the old standard, this XML format, and this is the kind of the new standard. Now, if we look, one of the benefits is you'll notice if I actually ran a character count, I can probably do that. The XML version of this document is 691 characters. Part of the benefit of JSON is the exact same data is represented in 494 characters. Now you might think 200 characters isn't a lot of difference, but really this file could have hundreds, thousands, or even millions of records. So if each one, by using JSON, we make it that much smaller, it means first of all we can transmit it faster. It also means for large amounts of data, particularly with cloud hosting now, we pay per bandwidth, per usage. So whatever we can do to optimize the transmission of data and make it as efficient as possible, it's going to save us money in the long run. The JSON notation also allows for white space, which you'll notice the XML notation doesn't. So the JSON code is really just easier to read. So there are many APIs that are out there today that actually let you choose if you want to use an API. One of the parameters you specify in making your request is what format do you want to work with? Do you want to work with XML or do you want to work with JSON? So more and more web services and APIs are moving towards using JSON, but it's important that you understand that XML, you will still encounter APIs that use XML only. But for today, for reCAPTCHA, this JSON, JavaScript Object Notation format is the one we're going to use. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to open up our save registration page. I've already opened, oops, sorry. I'm going to open mine up here. And I'll get my week 12 version. So we are already checking for valid username and that our passwords match, and we say if they're okay, then we're saving the user to the database. So we're going to want to add some code after the validation we're already doing. We're going to want to add several lines of code to check for a valid reCAPTCHA. So the first thing we're going to do is set up values for checking reCAPTCHA. I'm going to create two variables. Remember, we're going to have to pass to Google two values. We're going to have to pass our secret key and the user's response. Okay. So I'm going to create a variable called secret. And this is where I'm just going to set it equal to my secret key. So to do that, I'll just go back to reCAPTCHA. And if I go to my computer studies domain on DreamHost, if I click it and click on my keys, I'm going to grab my secret key. So earlier in this activity, I asked you to copy this key. You can grab it from Google, but I also suggested you put it in a text file for easier access. So I don't want the site key, I want the secret key. So I'm going to copy that value, go back to my code editor. And that's the first value we're going to send to Google. The second value we're going to send is the user's response. So we get this from our form post. So this code on Google, combined with the Google JavaScript, will generate a field called gReCAPTCHA response. I'll terminate with that with semicolon. So gReCAPTCHA response will give us the value what the user selected in the CAPTCHA box, in the reCAPTCHA box. Okay? So these are the two values that the API will require when we make a request. Now, we don't physically want to take the browser. We don't want to send the user off. We can't build another form and send the user off to Google. PHP and most other server-side scripting languages, it has an ability, a function that allows us make a URL request just in code. So we're not actually taking the browser to another page, but we're still sending an HTTP request and getting a response back. That function in many languages is called curl or CURL. So we're going to use that function. We haven't used it before. You can read about it on the PHP documentation. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a variable. I'll just call it ch, and we'll initialize a URL request. Now, before we can actually make that post to Google's API page, we're going to have to set up some of the properties. So what we're going to do is set some of the options. So this is a built-in PHP function. You see my code editor recognizes it. So we're going to set options on our web request. The first option we need to set is what is the URL we want to send a request to. So the name of that option is curl opt URL. Now, where are we going to send the request? We're going to send it to Google's API page. And if I come back here, it tells me the API is https google.com/reCAPTCHA/API/site verify. So I'm going to copy this from the Google reCAPTCHA developer documentation. So that's the third parameter, and that is needs to be a string, so I have to put that in quotes. Single or double, doesn't matter. So we've initialized our URL request. We've set up where we're going to go with this request. We want to set up a couple of other options as well. We want to set an option called return transfer. And we want that value to be set to true because we're not taking the user visibly in the browser off to another page. We're going to stay here when our request is done. The last thing we need to set is what type of request we're making, and we are making, as per the documentation, we are making a post request. So we're going to include that. So we're going to set the curl option as post to be true. So we haven't executed it yet. We're getting there, but the other things we have to do, remember our documentation says we also have to tell Google our secret key and the user's response before it will give us back this kind of JSON object. So what we need to do is create an array to hold the values we want to post to Google. So I'm going to create an empty array that will just hold two values. And then we'll create the first value, which I'll call secret. And you can probably guess what value goes in here. We're going to want our secret key variable. Then we're going to do the same thing. And these names in our post data, they need to exactly match the names that Google's asking for in the documentation. So they want secret and they want response, which is why we've named our variables secret and response. So now we want to include in the curl options we want to set the post fields to our post data array. If we don't do this part, we can still make a request to Google, but we won't be sending it any information, in which case we're going to get an error back from the Google API. So now it's all set up. We've initialized, we've told our server what URL we want to request. that we want to come back to this page, that we're doing a post, and that we're going to send in these two values. So now we'll execute the curl request. So I'm going to create a variable called result. This is going to store the JSON object that we get back from Google. So if we call curl exec, and now we execute our curl request, and lastly we can call curl close to release that object from memory. So line 51 is where we're actually sending the data to Google, and we're getting something back and we're storing it in the result. Now keep in mind, this is not a string that we get back, it's an object. So we can't just print this to the screen. What we're going to need to do is this comes back as a JSON. Notice it says a JSON object. It's not a JSON string. Looks like a string of text, and we can convert it to a string of text, which is what we're going to need to do next. So we will convert the response object from a JSON object to an array so we can read it. So we'll just create another variable, we'll call it result string equals. So PHP has built-in functions that will both convert from JSON to an array or take an array and convert it into JSON. So what we want to do, we already have a JSON object and we want to convert it back into an array. So we're going to call JSON decode, which my code editor recognizes. And first only required parameter is, well, what JSON object do we want? We'll want to take our result object from line 51. And we're going to say, yes, we want to make it store the result as an array. So we're going to make that second parameter true. Now we have, we're going to call that result array, would be better. So now we have a result array that we can evaluate. Check. So now we'll check, we'll do an if statement. If our result array value called success, and again that word success comes right from here, from the Google documentation. So if success is false, then we need to display a message to the user. Because if that success evaluates to false, then it may be a bot filling out our form and we don't want to proceed. We're also going to take our OK variable and set it to false. If the CAPTCHA wasn't successful, we don't want to go ahead and save the new user. Now, if success evaluates to true, well then this is fine. It means our CAPTCHA was correct and we can go ahead and save the user. So I'm going to save all those changes. So here's all my code. Starting on line 34, we're setting up the values we need to send to Google. We're initializing a request to their API. We're creating and appending on an array with our secret key and the user's CAPTCHA response. We'll execute that request. We'll get a response back, which we're going to convert from JSON to an array, and then we're going to evaluate the results of our success field. So I'm going to upload this and we'll try it out. upload. So I'll go back to my register page and I will put in, I'm going to leave the CAPTCHA unchecked and click submit. Okay, we'll figure out what we did. So one small change we need to make in our code, whenever we're calling the curl set options, these are case sensitive. So these options, the curl option URL, curl option return transfer, the curl option post, and the curl option post fields. So these 4 values here where we're setting options, they all need to be in all caps because those are enumerators that represent numbers in the PHP library. So these 4 values, again, I'm just highlighting them in green, those have to be all uppercase. This should solve our issue. So I'm going to re-upload my page. So I'm going to go back. I will try again. So I'm going to leave the CAPTCHA code unchecked. And it says, are you human? This time, I'm going to check the CAPTCHA code. And now it tells me that I've been saved. So now we'll see if I can log in with that new account. And now my account's been created and I can log in. So this is everything we need. Basically, this entire block that you see, put it right at the top. Starting from here, everything you see on the screen is what we need. So I'm going to leave this code up. You can pause or stop the video here. Make sure you have your reCAPTCHA working, and once you do, you can click Mark Reviewed to move on to our next activity.